Last year at the NFL trade deadline, Brad Holmes and the Detroit Lions decided to make a trade. But it's not a trade that a lot of fans wanted to see. It wasn't a trade for a pass rusher. It wasn't a trade for a cornerback. It wasn't a trade for offensive line depth. It was a trade to address what was one of the Lions' biggest concerns, that being the wide receiver position. Despite having Amon-Ra St. Brown on an all-pro trajectory and Sam Laporta being a second-team all-pro a season ago, it was pretty evident that the Detroit Lions did have some depth issues at wide receiver, and especially going into a couple years down the road, they are going to have to acquire a few more wide receivers for the future of this receiving core. Now, the Detroit Lions decided to go out and get arguably the best fit for the Brad Holmes system as a true X wide receiver in Donovan Peoples-Jones. Donovan Peoples-Jones stands at 6'2", 205 pounds, running 4.4 speed with incredibly strong hands. He has the ability to stretch the field, has the ability to go get a contested catch, and is the exact archetype of wide receiver that Brad Holmes loves to have. However, in 2023, he really didn't have the impact that a lot of Lions fans were hoping that he would, as in 2023, Donovan Peoples-Jones saw just 18 targets with the Cleveland Browns for 97 receiving yards, and then after being traded to Detroit, saw just 7 receptions where he had 5 catches for 58 yards and 0 touchdowns. His impact was not very large, but he was integrating very slowly into the offense. And when the ball did go his way, he was pretty productive. Again, 7 targets, 5 receptions, 58 yards, 3 first downs. Not a bad start to a player that was learning a brand new offense and a brand new system with a brand new quarterback. Now, despite his disappointing 2023 season, there still is a lot of hope for Donovan Peoples-Jones. And all you have to do is look back at his 2022 campaign where he saw 96 targets, had 839 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns through the air while averaging 13.8 yards per reception on the season. He was the true wide receiver 2 in the Cleveland Browns offense, having the second most targets behind just Amari Cooper, and he was really, really good. He was stretching the field like an X wide receiver. He was going up for contested catches. He was making big plays for touchdowns. He was making long catches and stretching the defense out. He was a true and a really, really strong wide receiver too. And despite his yards per reception going down every single year from his rookie season, getting 96 receptions for 13.8 yards per catch is not bad for a player at the 2 wide receiver position. So what happened in the 2023 offseason to lead to Donovan Peoples-Jones' targets going down, his efficiency going down, and just overall the numbers not being anywhere near where they were in 2022? Well, obviously, when 3 players have 100 plus targets on a season, it's going to be hard for that 4th wide receiver to put up numbers. Amari Cooper, for the millionth year in a row, has over 100 targets for the Cleveland Browns last year. David Njoku had well over 110 targets for the Cleveland Browns, being their second best weapon on the year as far as targets and as far as how many times he saw the ball. And then recently acquired wide receiver DJ Moore, working out of the slot, saw well over 100 targets as well, meaning 300 pass attempts went to just 3 players, which didn't leave a whole lot for the rest of the roster, didn't leave a whole lot for wide receiver 3, didn't leave a whole lot for tight end 2, and especially consider the running backs got work in the passing game. It really didn't leave Donovan Peoples-Jones with a lot of opportunity to get the ball. And when he did, he was still really effective. 13, almost 14 yards per reception is pretty good. He still had some big plays for Cleveland, but those plays were far and few between. And they felt like with 3 players that were consistently going to see 100 targets, they didn't need Donovan Peoples-Jones anymore, considering the depth that they had and considering the players that were going to get the ball. And of course, with Nick Chubb coming back next year, they're going to pass the ball even less, meaning there's even less opportunities for Donovan Peoples-Jones to get the football. Now, taking a look at his position now with the Detroit Lions, Donovan Peoples-Jones is arguably the 2nd best wide receiver, potentially the 3rd best wide receiver. He is going to be competing with Jameson Williams for snaps and targets next season, but with Josh Reynolds officially leaving the roster on his way out to Denver, you can see that there are 64 targets unaccounted for. If you multiply that by Donovan Peoples-Jones' average career yards per reception of 15.5, that would put DPJ at just under 1,000 receiving yards on the year in 2024 if he were to see all 64 of those targets. Now, of course, he probably won't. I think that Jameson Williams is going to get some more work. I do think that Donovan Peoples-Jones will see a good number of those targets, potentially even up to half, up to 32 of those targets, which would still put him just shy of 500 yards as a wide receiver 3. But I think that Donovan Peoples-Jones will have a really big impact on the Lions offense this year. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to get a lot of targets. Obviously, Sam Laporta is going to get a lot of targets. Amon-Ra last year, I believe, had close to 150 targets going his way, while Sam Laporta had just shy of 120. Those numbers very well could disperse a little bit as Jameson Williams becomes a better, more reliable target, as Donovan Peoples-Jones becomes more familiar with the offense and builds some chemistry with Jared Goff. And you might say, okay, well, is it really a good thing if Donovan Peoples-Jones and Jameson Williams are taking snaps and taking targets away from Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta? And I would argue that yes, it is. I would argue that even though Amon-Ra's numbers might not be nearly as good, even though Sam Laporta's numbers might not be as high, the offense becomes more dangerous when you have more players to get the football to. And with Jahmyr Gibbs becoming a great receiving threat, he was third on the team in targets last year. Sam Laporta being a second-team All-Pro, Amon-Ra St. Brown being a first-team All-Pro. Now you add a true X wide receiver to the offense, as well as a true Z wide receiver to the offense with Jameson Williams consistently being out there. The Lions offense could potentially take a massive step forward despite already being a top 5 offense for 2 consecutive years in a row. Donovan Peoples-Jones very well could be the starting boundary X wide receiver, allowing Amon-Ra to play more in the slot where he is more effective, and allowing Jameson Williams to be the wide receiver 2 as far as position, as far as lining up, be that Z wide receiver, which would mean he probably isn't facing press as much, meaning he's facing a lot more off coverage, meaning he's facing a lot more cornerback 2s, and he's going to have the opportunity to get more snaps and get more playing time there as well. Now, just taking a look at Donovan Peoples-Jones as a player, he fits what the Lions have been trying to do for a very long time at the boundary, right? At first, it was Tyrell Williams, a 6'4", 4.4 speed wide receiver with strong hands that could stretch the field. He didn't work out. Unfortunately, got a concussion in the very first game that the Detroit Lions played under Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, and I don't believe has played a snap of football since that game versus the 49ers. Then it was supposed to be DJ Chark, who did struggle with some drops and struggle with some injury concerns throughout the 2022 season. When he was on the field, he was quite good, a 6'3", 4.3 wide receiver, somebody that could stretch the field, that was supposed to be the big play threat, but consistently was unavailable for the Detroit Lions throughout the entirety of 2022. Then going into 2023, they were supposed to have Marvin Jones back, a 6'1" player that has played the X position for the Detroit Lions before, that was pretty good for the Jacksonville Jaguars as their X wide receiver, but unfortunately had to retire due to family issues and off the field concerns that were more important to him than football. Every single year, the Detroit Lions have tried to find that X wide receiver. Every single year, they have tried to find that 6'2", 200+ pound wide receiver that can run in the low 4.4s, that can stretch the field, that have strong hands. And for the first time in a while, they very well may have found that guy. Now, if Donovan Peoples-Jones puts up similar numbers to what DJ Chark did in 2022, I think the trade would be considered a success. I think if you see 40 targets, if you see 500 yards and 4 touchdowns, that is all you need of Donovan Peoples-Jones to unlock him in this offense, because then that means you have a consistent X wide receiver. That means you have a consistent deep threat that safeties have to worry about, that defensive coordinators have to worry about. And when you look at the Lions offense, you're never going to game plan for Donovan Peoples-Jones. You're going to have Amon-Ra. You're going to have Laporta. You're going to have Jameson Williams. You're going to have Jahmyr Gibbs. You're going to have David Montgomery. You're going to have to, counter for the Lions' elite offensive line up front. So at best case scenario, Donovan Peoples-Jones is the 6th person that the defensive coordinator is thinking about, despite being a player that can very well realistically reach 1,000 yards this season and reach 1,000 yards as an X wide receiver and go toe-to-toe toe with true cornerback one. So with all of that being said, I don't think you should give up on Donovan Peoples-Jones just yet. I think he fits what the Lions have wanted in the X wide receiver position. I think he's going to have the opportunity to take the top off of defense a lot of times this year. I think he's going to have the opportunity to be a big play threat for the Lions offense. And even though he might not reach 1,000 yards, even though he might not be the flashiest player, I do think he will be a very strong contributor to the offense this year. And I do think he will make the offense better and be a positive impact every single week. So with all of that being said, that is life for you guys today. Let me know your expectations for DPJ down in the comments below. Be very curious what you guys have to say and what you guys think. With all of that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.